like to call this meeting to order. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Handley, seconded by Councillor Wilson, that Council approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adoption of minutes. Moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor DeRose, that Council approve the minutes as presented. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mayor's report. On Wednesday, September 8th, I was honored to present the City of Thorold Senior Citizen of the Year Awards on behalf of Council. The recipients were 2020 City of Thorold Senior of the Year in memory of Rudy Walters. Overview was provided by Bob Liddycoat. And that was because last year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was not a ceremony held to do that presentation. And in the meantime, Rudy passed away. 2021 City of Thorold Senior of the Year, Barbara Berry. Overview was provided by Luann Ronsky and Patsy Ingoldsby. 2021 City of Thorold Senior Citizens Association Senior of the Year, Beverly Smith. Overview was provided by Linda Brightman. Awards were also presented by MPP Jeff Birch's representative, Regional Councillor Tim Whalen, and the Senior Citizens Association. Thank you, Jean D'Amelio Swire and Elaine D'Amico, for organizing this special event that was held at the Senior Center following all public health safety protocols. On Wednesday, September 8th, CAO Manoj Dalwaria and I met and had a meet and greet with Steve Vermeulen, the new Executive Vice President, Environmental Division for Walker Industries, who has replaced the recently retired Mike Watt. Vice President of Transfer and Disposal, Mike Dupree, and Vice President of Resource Recovery, Jeff Boyd, were also in attendance. On Thursday, September 9th, Councillor Sentence and I joined representatives from Brock University in our bylaw department, delivering good neighbor guides as well as engaging students and residents in the Winterberry-Juneberry area. This was part of the annual Welcome Wagon initiative that was done virtually with a small component in person due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our Town and Gown Committee and Subcommittee have been working extremely hard to deal with off-campus student issues in residential areas, particularly high-density residential areas like Winterberry-Juneberry area. Our subcommittee continues to meet weekly. We met September 15th and will be meeting again tomorrow to review and fine-tune our strategy. We are seeing improvements and continue to work effectively with all our community partners. Brock University Student Union, Brock Security, the NRPS, Regional Bylaw, and Regional Waste Management to monitor, patrol, and enforce infractions. A joint media release was sent out on September 17th and is posted on our website and Facebook page. On Friday, September 10th, I attended the Celebration of Nations opening ceremony, awards, and evening performance of Treaty, a reconciliation revelry, which was both educational and very well produced. It was a narrative and musical production. Thursday, September 30th is National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, a federal statutory holiday that the City of Thorold will be recognizing and observing. It is also known as National Orange Shirt Day. It is meant to honor Canada's residential school survivors, their families, and communities. This holiday publicly commemorates the history and ongoing legacy of residential schools. It also demonstrates a commitment to reconciliation and affirms every child matters. We will be hosting a flag raising ceremony at City Hall on Wednesday, September 29th at 1:30 p.m. to recognize this day. Michelle Elise Burnett, Artistic Director of Celebration of Nations, she also holds many other positions, will be in attendance. The First Nations Peace Monument at DQ House Heritage Park is an ideal place to visit, not only on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, but any time for a moment of quiet reflection. The Toolbox Project Niagara ran a very successful pasta dinner fundraiser on Wednesday, September 15th at Club Belvedere. 285 meals, 110 were donated to the homeless. Thank you, James Simons, Bolt Realty, and all the volunteers and sponsors who made this evening a success. Thank you, Mike Venery, for hosting this event, and Councillor Sentence for helping with the delivery of the meals. On Thursday, September 16th, I met virtually with Jane Crawley, Advisor Government Relations, Brock University, for a full update regarding on-campus activities and a return to in-person classes this term. On Sunday, September 19th, I attended the City of Thorold Terry Fox Run, which met and left from the Thorold Community Credit Union parking lot this year. Thank you, Cindy Dixon, for taking over the torch from Mike Sharon and continuing this important annual tradition, as well as presenting Mike with a framed Terry Fox poster, which included his picture in the background. This poster honored Mike's 40 years running the Terry Fox Run here in Thorold. Thank you to all the volunteers who helped with this event: Councillor Neal, Councillor Sentence, Thorold Fire and Emergency Services, Thorold Pipe Band, and Jim Dixon. Councillor DeRose and his children also participated in this event. Dr. Hergy provided the latest public health COVID-19 status update on Friday, September 17th, with the next one scheduled for Friday, October 1st at 2 p.m. Once again, these sessions are live streamed on the Niagara Regional website. As we continue in step 3 of the provincial roadmap to reopen, please continue to follow the public health safety measures and get vaccinated if you are able to and haven't already done so. Clinics are available by appointment or walk-ins for first and second dose of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. Check out niagararegion.ca/COVID vaccine for more information and answers to commonly asked questions. Starting tomorrow, September 22nd, Ontarians will need to be fully vaccinated, 2 doses plus 14 days, and provide proof of vaccination along with photo ID to access certain public settings and facilities. Detailed information is available on the provincial website. Congratulations goes out to Vance Badaway on being re-elected as MP for Niagara Centre, the riding that includes the City of Thorold. Also, thank you to all the candidates across Canada who put their name forward and ran in this election. And that's the end of my mayor's remarks. There are presentations. So up, is Andrew here? Okay. Presentations, we have Andrew White, Chief Executive Officers of Char Technologies Limited, that is going to give us a presentation. And I'll turn this over to Andrew. Welcome.
Sorry, I was just rejoining there, but I think welcome was my cue, so I appreciate it. Your worship and councillors, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here to present to you this evening. I'll take you through a very quick presentation of the company and the technology and the project that we are hoping to pursue here in Thorold. And then, of course, welcome any questions you all may have. So
and I see Galen's on
I
with
will
you.
Share my screen. And we can kick it off. So as a really quick introduction to who Char is made up of 3 groups. We have a environmental engineering services and compliance group. I'm not going to talk too much about that tonight. We have a clean technology group where we do both industrial clean water and waste reduction renewable energy. That second bullet is going to be the bulk of what we discuss tonight. And then we have a third group called Char Biocarbon. That'll make a lot more sense as we go through the presentation and I explain to you what the project is and how we would like to approach it. So our clean technology is called high temperature pyrolysis. So this graphic on the right is kind of a representation of what a high temperature pyrolysis kiln looks like. But at a high level, it's basically just an oven that we can get to very high temperature. So think 800, 850 degrees Celsius. And we keep all of the oxygen, all of the air out of it. And because there's no air, nothing can burn. You can't sort of have combustion, but you get what's called thermochemical conversion. And so we convert these feedstocks in the bottom, biosolids, digestate, and wood, into clean energy and biocarbon. So I'll explain both of those in a couple of slides. Specific for Thorold, we're just looking at that feed on the right, the wood and wood waste stream. And from a clean energy perspective, what we're making is called renewable natural gas. So I'll explain a little bit more about that as well. But that's what the technology is. This is what it actually looks like. So this is our operating facility in London, Ontario, where we take construction demolition wood, we convert it into this clean energy. We convert it into a bio-coal that we call Clean Fire here, which we are currently selling to the large steel mills to allow them to offset their coal consumption. So we're basically turning wood into a carbon neutral coal replacement to let them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. The other really important point about this slide is kind of the third kind of bullet point down, that it's self-sustaining. So this plant, once we get it operational, runs itself. So we don't need to use external energy sources like natural gas to run it. It runs itself off of the energy it generates, which makes it both very environmentally friendly, zero greenhouse gas emission, but also relatively cost effective as well. So as I mentioned, Clean Fire, on March 17th, we received an order from one of Canada's largest steel mills to process and allow them to consume 1,000 tons of our bio-coal. And really, the reason that the steel industry is interested in things like bio-coal, which is one of our solid outputs, is that when you consume 1 ton of coal in a blast furnace, you actually create 3 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. 1 ton of bio-coal, which we've branded Clean Fire, replaces 1 ton of coal. So it's a drop-in replacement. So as far as the blast furnace is concerned, it's the exact same thing. But the big difference is when you use 1 ton of bio-coal, it creates no greenhouse gas emissions. And this is crucial for the steel industry because a blast furnace actually needs solid carbon. They can't switch to kind of a lower energy source or a lower carbon emitting source because the chemistry of a blast furnace needs solid carbon. And in Ontario alone, the 3 big steel mills consume about 1.7 million tons of coal every year. So we have a great opportunity here to help reduce a significant amount of greenhouse gas emissions by converting wood waste into this bio-coal product. The other product that we produce, we always produce 2 products. One is that bio-coal, and the other is a renewable gas stream. So the renewable gas can be one of 2 options. The first is green hydrogen. No doubt you've all heard a lot about green hydrogen in the last kind of couple of years. This is a graphic from the Ontario Hydrogen Strategy. And the only point to make here really is that biomass, through technologies like ours, is already identified as a green hydrogen. And we've now recently announced a project in California that we're building to produce green hydrogen out of this biomass. And this is that project, just to give you a bit more history of the company and what we're doing. This is with Hitachi Zosen Innova in San Luis Obispo, California. So this is a project we're building. That's their facility right there. And we're basically taking a byproduct. They take food waste and make clean energy. They make a compost, and we actually take their compost, so their byproduct, and we turn that into green hydrogen, which we're very excited about, and as is Hitachi. So we think this is a great project. The reason to highlight that is to say that's one of the gas options. The other one is called renewable natural gas. So again, it's similar to natural gas. It's just made from renewable sources. And what we're most excited about are kind of two pieces. One, a lot of jurisdictions are putting in mandates to say we want a certain percentage of our natural gas grid to be renewable. So the two Canadian ones here, British Columbia through their utility Fortis BC, and Quebec through their utility Énergir. And Énergir did a study, they commissioned a study to say if we got our natural gas grid to be 10% renewable by 2030, where does the feedstock, where does the material come to convert into renewable natural gas? And what they found was that over 80% would have to come from wood waste through technologies like ours. So there's a huge demand for gas, and we're, I think, very well positioned to help grow that renewable natural gas production industry. And to really highlight the point, this bottom quote here, just Fortis's 15% blending target would require between 35 and 40 pentajoules of renewable natural gas. That's a unit of energy. A pentajoule is 1 million gigajoules. And Canada across the entire country only produced 6. So again, there's a huge market demand for this renewable natural gas that we can convert wood waste into. So now to talk specifics. So what's our plan and what would we like to do in Thorold? Well, first is to move that existing plant that I showed you a picture of from London to Thorold, and specifically to the Thorold multimodal hub. We think it's a fantastic location. I think there's a lot of opportunity at that site, and we're excited to be able to look at moving our facility there. For that project, we've got funding in place from the Natural Gas Innovation Fund, so that's supported by a number of the Canadian gas utilities, as well as Bioindustrial Innovation Canada. They're a great clean chemistry hub producer, and certainly there's an opportunity for this to be the first of a number of follow-on type projects building out a real clean chemistry hub. This plant will produce both that renewable natural gas and biocoal for the steel industry just down the QEW. And we're hoping to actually have it commissioning in March 2022. So it's a fairly quick time frame, but because the plant is built, we're just essentially moving it. It's a realistic and reasonable time frame. Once phase 1 is operational, we would then move to phase 2, which is a larger system. So this is just a layout. The point here is to show that a single module of our phase 2 system takes about 10,000 square feet of space. So from an industrial processing perspective, it's actually relatively quite small. And so what does this phase 2 look like? It's producing 500,000 gigajoules per year of renewable natural gas. So that's the average gas consumption of about 5,500 homes. And with that, there's certainly an opportunity to grow the Thorold location to be a renewable natural gas production hub to also serve local industrial gas consumers within the region and adjoining regions. This project would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 60,000 tons per year, which is about the equivalent of removing 13,000 cars off the road each year. And to make this much gas, we process about 76,000 tons of wood waste that we can source locally. And so if I can make kind of one ask of council tonight, in order to proceed down the path of developing this phase 2 project, we are putting a submission in for funding to create detailed engineering design. So not to build the plant yet, but just to do the detailed engineering design. And with Thorold Council support, it becomes a much stronger application. So after our questions, if this is a project that Council could support, we would be very appreciative of a brief letter of support indicating so. And so with that, that's the end of my very quick presentation. I know it was kind of a lot to try and get through very quickly for you, but I'm very open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And if we can go back, I see Andrew's here and Galen's here as well. Galen Cranston. So I'm going to open the floor to questions and to the presenters, and I'll get Councillor Hanley to kick things off.
Thank you. Great presentation. I'll just ask some questions, comments after. Can I ask why you're moving the plant to Thorlt? My first of a couple of questions. From London, I know I appreciate it. That hub will be a very interesting thing to come in the future as far as redevelopment of that property. Is that one of the reasons?
That's one of the reasons. So at our current site, we're relatively space constrained. We are bringing in our feedstock from the Thorold area, and our customers are in Hamilton for the biocarbon. So logistically, it makes a lot more sense. We're able to secure a site that allows us to not only have our existing plant run, but we have the space to expand into this phase two. So it's all about space and logistics that started us looking in the Thorold area. And then after, I think we toured the multimodal hub site about 10 times and started to get very excited about the future opportunities that I think that site presents.
A very promising area for sure. Now, and you mentioned the Thorlt site would be more or less to burn or from wood products. Obviously, because neither way you burn wood products, they have zero greenhouse gas emissions. Is that one of the reasons too? Is you find that there'll be a substantial amount of chips? Are you looking also, if I could just part of the question, using farm byproducts also from within the area?
So for this site, it would be primarily wood. And remember, at the plant site, we're not burning any of that wood. We're processing it at temperature, but none of it gets burned. But because you're right, when you burn wood, it doesn't produce any greenhouse gas emissions. It's carbon neutral. That's why we're using wood as our feedstock to make these biocoals and these renewable natural gases.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No more questions this time. Comments after, though, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. I have Councillor Sentence. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you for the presentation, Andrew. Great opportunities out there. I like everything that you said. Just a couple of questions for you. The clean air coming out. Thorold South smelled like vanilla for probably 30 years. I just want to make sure that what you're producing or is coming out doesn't affect the area in any way, in a negative way.
Yeah, so the feedstock we're using, like I said, is wood, so it's generally odorless. We're also looking to have the feedstock delivered in a relatively just-in-time basis, so we're not sort of stockpiling, a month's worth of wood on the site. And then as the gas is produced, the thing to remember is because we're making renewable natural gas, the system is sealed and air is kept out of it. So because of that, none of that gas is vented or otherwise exposed to the atmosphere. So the only emissions are from the burner system we use to get the heat. And those emissions would be very similar to any industrial boiler. So there wouldn't be odor, there wouldn't be smoke or particulate or any of those concerns.
Perfect, thank you. Just one more thing. If you're looking for good employees, a lot of people from that mill lost their jobs down the road. So when you're opening up, just keep them in mind. That's all I would say. Thank you. I'll support.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Sentence. I seen Councillor Wilson had her hand up before. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Andrew. Andrew, that leads to my question. I was just wondering how many people you project you would employ in this facility should you be successful?
Yeah, so at kind of phase one, the initial project will be basically 3, but once we get into phase 2 and we're building and operating a much larger facility, we would project it to be on the order of 10. But I think what we're also excited about is once we get into this phase 2, this big production, our current system, we have ambition to convert that into essentially an R&D system where we can continue to test and create additional revenue streams and efficiencies. So as we move into that phase, we also are looking at sort of the highly qualified person, whether it's from local universities or other, to work in the lab space. And that would probably be another 4 to 5 employees once all said and done. So once everything's completed, we're looking at about 15.
Perfect.
Direct.
Any further questions, Councillor Wilson? Okay, I had
No,
Counselor
that's
Kenny,
all.
Counselor Kenny, and then I got Counselor Longo after that.
Yeah, you said your wood supply is from the Niagara area. Where would that be?
We're collaborating well with Walker Environmental. They're supplying us our feedstock for our existing facility, and they would be our partner to continue to supply us the biomass we need.
So all the wood waste would go from Walker's straight to there?
That's
Just
right, and they've
that
got
short-
the
that
ability to
short,
process.
trip?
Exactly.
Okay, because and the burn is, you say 100% burn?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Well, is there no ash at the end of it, or is it 100% burn?
Yeah. So again, it's there's no burning. So that what comes out is actually a carbon product. So if I could show pictures of it, it looks more like an activated carbon. So if you cracked open your Brita filter, that's kind of what the output looks like. So it's got a lot of fixed carbon in it and not a lot of ash. And the reason that's important is then it becomes attractive to the steel mills to put into their blast furnaces. So because it's not burning, we're not actually creating ash, we're creating a fixed carbon coal replacement product.
And this is warm enough that anything that was in the wood would melt to turn to part of the product?
Yeah, it basically turns into the gas stream, into that energy gas stream, because we're operating at about 850 Celsius.
Okay, so there would only be stuff trucked in, and then one product going out. There'd be no garbage going out. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we'd have the gas going out in pipeline and the bio coal going out by truck.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. White. Mr. White, everything sounds great, but I'm a little gun shy. I was on last council. I'm not sure if anybody let you know about something that happened then. We had somebody come in and wanted to do a facility similar to yours, not the same technology, obviously. So I guess my question to you is, you're looking for us to support you or approve this project?
At this point, we're just looking for support. That conceptually this sounds like a project that fits with Thorold and fits with the ambition for the multimodal hub. The output of that support for that project is a much more detailed engineering design package that we can use to find additional project finance, to find additional project support to actually go and build the phase 2 piece.
Okay. And again, mentioning this project that was proposed to Thorold 6 or 7 years ago, it actually went to the region of Niagara for their support also. Has your company gone to the region of Niagara to get their support for this, or are you only coming to us?
We are coordinating a meeting. Galen, you look like you're maybe
we're
we've
in
got
the
it confirmed.
pipeline to present as well. I've been coordinating with some of the Thorold people to speak with them, and we're going to be scheduled shortly.
Okay. Because you did say something that just a few minutes ago that kind of tweaked something in my head. You said it's generally odorless. So that concerns me a little bit. So, and again, I'm not trying to shed a negative light on this. I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence. So again, my concern is the city of Thorold doesn't have a lot of experts in this area, where the region of Niagara may have more people since they have an environmental center. So would you think it would be best that we wait for them to put their support behind it before the city of Thorold?
I would defer to your good judgment on that, whether it's best to have Thorold supported or wait for the Niagara regional support. But we are intending to, and as Galen mentioned, we are in the pipeline to present to the Niagara Regional Council, and Like I said, if that's the pathway that makes the most sense and allows for the appropriate level of due diligence, then we're very happy to take that path.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Maybe before we would approve or support this particular project, I agree with Councillor Longo. We ended up having a presentation and it sounded good and all of those sorts of things. And then all of a sudden, all the information came out that wasn't quite the same as when the presenters had presented. And I think I myself, I would wait till we at least talk to London and see what their comments might be. And again, the region has more expertise, as Council Longo has said, because I'm not an expert in this at all. And our expert that was on council is not on council anymore. So, I would defer to some other experts regarding this particular. It sounds really good, and I hope that it does what it's supposed to do, because I love to approve this or support this project. But I think I might wait to get another bit of information before I would go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Hanley.
Mr. Mayor, maybe we could put a motion on the floor that we accept his presentation and that we direct staff or the proponent themselves to make a presentation or ask for input from Niagara Region before given approval by council of our approval of the project in general. That's what I would think we should do. And I say that because if we might remember when we had the plant that Councillor Longo alluded to, in regards to it, we done the same thing. They came to council, we improved it in general, and then the firestorm started because residents didn't get an opportunity to have any type of input. So we should be looking at that too. So maybe put a motion on the floor that we accept the presentation as council and ask that before moving further, that a presentation or be made to the Niagara Region and we accept input from the Niagara Region.
Okay. Do I have a
In that general context.
Yeah, I got you. And Councillor Longo, did you want to second that? Councillor Longo seconding that. So that's the path. It's going to go through the region and then back to us. Is that correct, Councillor Hanley?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's the motion on the floor. Speakers to that motion. Go ahead, Councillor Kenny. You're speaking to that motion now.
Correct. I'd like to make a friendly amendment if I could, and that would be that we also speak with the City of London to see if there's any problems that they are having with this particular business. And it doesn't hurt to talk to where the companies come from, if that would be all right with Councillor Hanley.
Accept it.
Accepted, a friendly amendment. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other speakers? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, Andrew and Galen, thank you for coming to council. So now you're going to go to the region, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay.
Sounds great. I appreciate everyone's time tonight and the opportunity, and look forward to presenting to the regional council.
I look forward to your presentation. I want to thank you for taking the time to come here tonight. Thank you. Okay. Motions for council support. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, and she's going to, and a seconder, Councillor Decker, and Councillor Wilson, it's on the fence policy. Do you have it there to read?
Yes, sorry, just let me pull it.
Go
down.
ahead. You're up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, just give me 1 second. It's
No,
not
no,
coming
go
up
ahead.
now. Okay, so that council direct the planning and development services staff to extend the townhouse fencing pilot project currently in place in Confederation Heights to all future townhomes across the city of Thorold where considered to be appropriate.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. Does anyone want to speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, as to the height of fencing,
Yeah,
could we have, I've seen some areas in Confederation Heights that seems that to me, I don't know if I'm wrong or not, but the fence bylaw states it could only be 6.5 feet high. I think the only other way they allow it to be a higher barrier, if it was between a roadway, like a highway. Because I see some fences being erected in our subdivision areas that seem to be extensively high in statute. So,
what did,
is
do you want?
this permissible? Before I
Well, let me
I
get,
know some areas currently.
no, let's get Jason. Jason, is Jason on? Jason, do you want to comment on Councillor Hanley's question, please?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the fences, any fences that are installed in the residential area do need to conform to the fence bylaw, and you are correct, Councillor Hanley, that the maximum allowable height is 6.5 feet, measured from the highest point adjacent to the fence. So if you've noticed this, we can certainly take a look at it.
Councillor Hanley,
Great, I appreciate that. That I will do that, Jason. I will reach out to you because I do know areas, developers and that stuff is, they look to be like probably about 10-foot high fences and that stuff along Hawthorne and drive down there, that area there. So if you would, but I can give you some other areas and that stuff maybe we could look at, because I don't want us to pass this. I agree with Councillor Wilson that should be done. But we need to make sure that they know what the rule is in regards to how high that fence can be.
So
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It has to conform to the fence bylaw, Councillor Hanley, but that's a good point you bring up. Okay, any further questions on that? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just make a few comments regarding the bylaw. I'm a little concerned about the wording where it's considered to be appropriate. I'm not quite sure what that means. It's kind of ambiguous. Not sure who would determine when it is appropriate, when it's not appropriate. The other thing I'll say is I didn't support this bylaw the first time it came through. I just think it adds undue price pressures to housing. Somebody has to pay for these. There's housing affordability issues now. This just does more to increase price of housing because wood is expensive. And I will go along with what Councillor Hanley says. It seems like where the pilot project is taking place, we have a serious issue with compliance to fence bylaws. I think it's Juneberry down near Hawthorne, they're erecting 10-foot walls that are basically enclosing the entire townhouse complex from one end to the other.
So
those are just my comments. I won't support this because I didn't support it last time.
Okay, Councillor Longo, two things. That's not where the pilot project is, though. The pilot project's on the new circle. I don't know the name of the street. The pilot project is that new circle behind Winterberry that backs onto the highway. That's the
Okay.
pilot project. But all that.
Well, for some reason, Mr. Mayor, it looks like the developer is putting up 10-foot high fences.
Okay, and I'll
at
see
the end
if
of each townhouse
it's a good.
row.
I'll see if I can get an answer to that. I seen Paul was on, our Director of Planning and Development Services. Paul, do you want to comment on that, or Jason, one of you, please?
I think we might be able to both a little bit. So I just wanted to speak briefly about the wording about where it's considered to be appropriate. So we want to be able to review each development application on its own merits. And there may be instances where you've got townhouses proposed that don't warrant fences. So it might be backing on to an existing residential development where fences are already there. There may be, other situations where it's not appropriate. So what we wanted to do would be that each development application that came forward that had townhouses and there was fencing, staff would make that analysis. We would present that to council when the application came forward with our recommendation, but ultimately council would have have input on that decision on whether the fences would go forward or not. The only time when, they wouldn't come forward to council is if it's just a block of land that is only going through site plan. And again, we would, use our best judgment on fencing, knowing the concerns of council.
Thank you, Paul. Jason, did you want to talk about those high fences that have been brought up in that discussion?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these fences in particular that have been mentioned by council tonight, I am taking note of it. This is the first I've heard of these fences at this height. So I am making note of it and we will definitely investigate, but they do need to conform to the fence bylaw.
Okay, does that answer your questions, Councillor Longo?
Yeah, I'll patiently wait for an answer because I had asked about this before. The 10-foot high fence that was built on Richmond Street, and it doesn't conform to our fence bylaw, but it was allowed. So I'll wait again for another answer. Thank you.
Councillor Hanley.
Yeah, I could make note too, where we had some recent issues with Brock. You may have not noticed, but they started erecting a fence there too. And by the size of the poles coming on the ground, it looks like it's going to be a 10-foot fence, so it can block the view what was occurring. So we may have to look into that, because I know for a fact that I haven't been around to see if a fence has actually been installed, but I know the post was there. Just a couple of days afterwards, they started installing posts there to erect the fence so that residents wouldn't be able to view what was going on between those townhomes.
Okay.
If we could check into that too, please.
That's part of, yeah, he's got that down. Okay. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this. When we were walking around on our walk with Brock, and my wife and I went for a car ride Friday and Saturday night, and it can be a disaster. If this is a little bit of help to these areas, then I think we have to do it. My opinion is, if I'm buying a house that already has a fence, I'm happier than having to call Mr. Post or call whoever and erect the fence. Just my opinion. So I'll be supporting this, especially from what I've seen. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Did you get that? Okay, thank you. Councillor Sentence on naming policy. I have a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor Decker, and I'll turn this over to Councillor Sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Decker, that council direct the planning and development staff to review the naming policy and report back on suggested revisions.
Okay, and this is on the street naming policy, correct? Go ahead, Councillor Sentence. You're
Muted.
You're muted.
Councillor Sentence, you're muted.
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, it wouldn't come off. I apologize.
So do you want to review, do you want to put street naming policy rather than just naming policy?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, that is, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
I just want to say, yeah, I support this. I know me and myself and Councilor Neal brought this up some time ago too, and thought that a report could have come back forth, because just an example, where they're doing all those houses and those new homes in the Exelon area, something that would incorporate what had occurred there before those lands are redeveloped, where housing is occurring in Port Robinson and that stuff, like some of those names that they come out with and that stuff, doesn't really reflect and recognize people that have contributed to this municipality, or factories or institutions or whatever. So I'm going to support the motion. That's something we come back with some type of revision as to how we go about doing in the future.
Okay,
So
any further ones? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be in support of this too, and I hope that staff comes back with adjusting that policy just so that they have to take a certain percentage from the list of names of people that did something, like as Councillor Hanley said, in that area, or at least in Thorold, right? So I hope they come back with a percentage. So if you have 10 streets, they have to at least name 2 something relevant other than Sugarberry and Candy Cane Lane. That would be my hope.
Thank you.
I'll definitely.
Councillor Kenny.
I'll support this. I brought it up when we named the streets last time. An example, a couple we've had in the last year, a couple residents that were over 90 years old. One was a fireman for over 50 years in Thorold South. Another store owner, Rocky Dorado, Don Cece. And I'd also like to say to staff, if they're looking for some history and some possible names, I'd be more than willing to sit down with them and probably maybe some other counselors to give some names of people that they feel should be recognized. So maybe we should set something up as a group to come up with some names and even put it out to the public, to people. Maybe put it in the Thorold News that we're looking for names of people that we think should be recognized in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll support this endeavor, and I appreciate what its intention is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion to receive and file minutes or adopt recommendations of council, committees, and boards. Minutes to review for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Sentton, seconded by Councillor Decker, that council receive and file the minutes of the committees of council boards as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. There are none, there's no recommendations, correct? No, no recommendations, okay. Statement by councillors. Councillor Neal, feasibility of interim financing agreement with Friends of Lower Secord.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Friends of Lower Secord Trail Committee has approached us in the recent past to build a trail. And they have received federal funding from the federal government and funding from other sources. But in order to get the funding, they have to submit in their expenses. So I would like to put a motion forward, moved by myself, second by Councillor Decker, that the council direct the Director of Public Works and Community Services to bring back a report on whether an agreement can be completed to cover matters involving construction management, interim financing, insurance, and asset ownership for the Lower Secord Trail project.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Does anyone want to speak to that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Neal, update on Indigenous program and ceremony at the Peace Monument DQ House.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, now that we have a national holiday for truth and reconciliation, I did approach the One Thorold group regarding what to do for us for the September 30th. They've come to the realization that it's really too quick to try and do anything specific for this year, but they discussed it, and I've discussed it with both the Indigenous Education Group, Michelle Elise Burnett, and I've discussed it with the mayor and the CAO in the city of Thorold, and I've discussed it with the Ministerial Association, and of course with the One Thorold Group. And what the One Thorold Group would like to do is put together a committee to come up with an Indigenous program to include a ceremony at the Peace Monument at the Q House and other initiatives. So I don't need a motion or want a motion. I just would like to let people know that this is what's going to be happening.
And you're talking about this coming and working on it for next year, am I correct, Councillor Neal?
That is correct.
Okay, and so for this year, as you're aware, I mentioned in my mayor's remarks, we'll be doing the flag raising, and Michelle Elise Burnett will be there on the 29th at 1:30, and everybody's invited, and that will be part of what we do this year, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor DeRose, go ahead. Requests of support to continue to request Brock and NRP accept a greater role in dealing with what is transpiring with Brock students.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, that's exactly what I wanted to speak about. Just a request for support that Brock University and Niagara Regional Police accept a greater role in dealing with what is transpiring with Brock students' behavior in Thorold's residential community. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you guys are doing a great job in the town and gown. I know that staff is working diligently, but I want to paraphrase just some of the texts I get regularly since school started on a Saturday and Sunday morning. And, pardon some of the language, but brawl 3 a.m. outside my house. Someone is threatening to stab someone. During brawl, Brock security and Niagara Regional Police officer drive by and don't stop. Another day, brawl at 4 a.m. in the street. Someone has a bottle busted over their head, blood everywhere. Ambulance took him away. Excuse the language, but oral sex being viewed between our houses, and my kids saw this. People taking their pants down and urinating on my property. A girl taking a poo on my front steps. And the list goes on. Over 200 students at a street party, and we're afraid to go outside. So basically, Mr. Mayor, as much as everything that's being done, our residents in that area of town are feeling afraid. They feel helpless. So if we can help in any way, so I have a motion that I'm looking for council support. I have a motion that the mayor prepare a letter on behalf of council addressed to Brock University president and Niagara Regional Police chief, requesting that the partners continue to work collaboratively and proactively with the city of Thorold in order to curb or resolve the recent and ongoing incidents with Brock University students and their guests, because some of this is coming from their guests that are coming from out of town and in our community. And that Brock cover all costs incurred for additional policing that is required to keep our residents safe.
Okay, and I don't know if you're aware, but what you're requesting, we're already doing, just so you're aware. We meet regularly.
Mr. Mayor, it's not working though.
Well, it is working because
I wouldn't get these texts every weekend if it was working.
Things were bad the first night. I'm the first to admit, but they've improved drastically since then, and there has been a large level of enforcement and tickets and arrests made. So they haven't just drove by and not responded to it, as well as imposing a ride check on Richmond Street. I can go on and on. And Brock is paying for the extra patrol during these times, just so you're aware. So I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just telling you all these things are happening. That's what I'm telling you.
That's great, Mr. But also they need to adhere to their code of conduct for students, and maybe need to be stricter with them, because whatever is going on, and I know you're diligent, town and gown is diligent, staff is diligent, but there's still a lot of loose ends that need to be dealt with, and we can't just turn a blind eye to it. Thank you.
And we aren't turning it. But I'll open the floor. Councillor Sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with what you're saying here, but through the town and gown, and I even stopped at the ride program the other day, they are sending as many as they can. The problem comes down to if they have something that they deem more important, they have to go. No amount of money or anything will do anything when they consider these things nuisance. But they had wagons in there, they had police in there when I went for the ride. I saw bylaws, so things are being done. But where I agree with you 100% is that student code of conduct is the key to everything. If you had to call your parents and say, I have been kicked out for a semester, and then you had to reapply to get back into school, and you get kicked out again, and you have to call your parents and say, Mom, Dad, I've been kicked out of school, that has a lot of teeth to it. And I bring that up at town and gown all the time, and I think we got to press on that issue. So I have no problem supporting what you said, but there are a lot of things going on already, Councillor DeRose, that are having a positive effect, just not a perfect effect. But that code of conduct is key to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sentence. Councillor Hanlon.
I'd like to know one student that's been disciplined in that way from Brock and that stuff. I concur with Councillor DeRose. Myself too. Several emails, several things. My biggest concern is this. We got 40 cases of COVID now going on in Thorold. Isn't this all about protecting our citizens? Why aren't we going out there and finding these people? Because they can be identifiable through the photos that have been taken, like we do in incidents after we go after some business here in town after the fact. An event occurs, and then I know for a fact the city's gone after the fact and has fined these individuals. Are we doing the same with this here at Brock? I personally can't answer that because I don't know. Because what I get from the citizens myself is all the same thing. I'm glad I've been able to speak about it. Is that the inactiveness of it? You say the police are present, but the people that live right there, and there's some reputable individuals in this municipality that I'm sure would like to talk to you, and you probably heard of Mr. Mayor. I cannot believe what they're saying to be false. It's got to be true. They live it. We only hear it after the fact. We don't live it. We hear it after the fact.
Well,
that's the issue here. And I believe that we need to be more proactive, the municipality, and we need to address it because it has failed, as Councilor DeRose says, and I applaud you. The police are doing everything, and that's been the same story as I send an email to everybody for 18 years.
Well,
it hasn't changed, Mr. Mayor.
I can
and
tell
we
you
need to
this,
do something
Councillor
as a
Hanlon.
municipality to make it change.
There's never been as many tickets issued as there has been the last 2 weekends. Just so you're aware, they are issuing tickets. I can tell you that. And our bylaw has been issuing tickets as well. Councillor Kenny.
Yes, I know we're working at it and we got to continue to work at it. But I don't like when I hear that the officers had to leave to go somewhere else. If somebody has a special event, even a high school dance, they have to hire a cop for 8 hours. Why don't we hire somebody that isn't on duty and get Brock to pay for it? His job is to drive up and down that street for 8 hours from 8 p.m. till 4 in the morning. Why don't we just get one cop dedicated for that? Never mind a guy on duty. Get them to hire somebody. Like if you have a special event, you have to pay for a police officer to be there. So this is a special event by the sounds of it. So every Friday and Saturday or on St. Patrick's Day, they pay for a cop from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. to drive up and down that street and go nowhere else and give tickets. I think that's what we should do.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. I will tell you that it's not the police that Brock's hiring that have to leave. It's the regular patrol that leaves. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Longo.
I understand that, but I think we should hire somebody that's not working except for that job.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 7 years on council, mid-September, every term of council, the same topic comes up, but it just gets worse every year. That's the problem. The NRP do what they can do. I agree with Councillor Kenny. Brock University needs to step up, and I'll go on my mini rant. City of Thorold pays about $6 million for policing every year. When we have to take police and put them on Winterberry and Juneberry, we ignore and neglect other areas of the city and the region to handle problems that crop up every year. Brock University, I know, hired a few, but they spend nowhere near what we spend, and they contribute nothing to the City of Thorold taxes for the costs that we incur. They need to step up and do their job. Not lip service, not tweets that come out after the fact. They need to take care of this because it all reflects back on this council. And this council, people say we do nothing. We're limited in what we can do. The police are limited in what they can do. And I agree with Councillor Kenny, but if Councillor Kenny thinks one police officer is going to solve the problem on Winterberry, it will not happen because the police stand back because that's what they're trained to do because they don't want to provoke mobs. And they've told me this. So this issue is not going away, but we need we need it looked at hard. We need some help here. We're a community of 18,000 people, and there's an institution with more people going to it than the population of Thorold has. We have a big issue. And that's my rant for this September 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Sentence hit the nail on the head, the code of conduct. And I think that if 2 or 3 of those students that were handed out tickets also were subjected to being booted off for at least one semester, if not the whole year, I think it would come to almost to an end very, very quickly. And that's what I think should happen, and probably should have happened a while ago. But we can have a couple of police officers on there Friday and Saturday nights, which will help if they're stationed there and handing out tickets and that. But I think the university has to do a little bit more than what they're doing. And I think the code of conduct is the way to do it. And I have a cousin who lived across from the Hamilton University in a beautiful subdivision. And if you go there today, it's all student housing. And sometimes, from what I understand, that the police even are afraid to go in to that particular neighborhood anymore. So that's what's happening elsewhere. And I know Queen's University had it worse than we had it. They had a big riot there last weekend with 2,000 kids yelling and screaming and doing whatever that they were doing. So it's not an easy answer. Councillor Longo and Councillor Hanley and myself have been here for a long time, and we keep on talking about it. But from my perspective, you can have all the police you want there and that, but I think it's when it hits the pocketbook of both the student and the student's parents, that's when things will happen.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. I had Councillor Decker. Did you have your hand up? Councillor Decker, did you have your hand up? Councillor Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. I agree with all the parties.
Thank you.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just want to say that I agree. Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Okay, perfect. I agree with the code of conduct. I think that somewhere, if we are sending a memo to Brock, we have to be stern and say that, you know, students that are getting arrested or that are getting ticketed, that they should be suspended from school. And, you know, we're going to keep fighting to have things like that happen. I did see last weekend the ride program set up there over the overpass on Richmond, and I thought that was great. Can they do that every weekend? I don't know, but it was good to see that stuff out there last weekend. And we just have to stay, you know, we have to be stern, and we just have to keep on them that, you know, we're not going to tolerate this behavior, and we're going to keep at them until, you know, we see things being done. So I just want to say, you know, in the town and gown, I know they're doing a great job, and our bylaw officers are trying to do the best they can, and it's something that it's ongoing, and I don't know what else to say to control it except to, you know, stay stern, and maybe in the letter say, you know, when these kids are having these parties and they're getting arrested or ticketed, that because they, you know, broke the code of conduct, they should be suspended.
Thank you, Councillor Decker. Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I stated earlier, code of conduct is a great tool. However, keep in mind, I think you also have to take into account the added policing, because what's happening now, from what I hear from people there, they're inviting friends from out of town also. So some of these people that are perpetrators are not even students. So that's a police issue. So I think we've got to cover all our bases and come at them strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. And all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we'll do that, and we'll get those letters off, Councillor DeRose. I got Councillor Hanley. Battle of Beaver Dams Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. If we could get, I know I had a little memo here about in regards to the construction, that stuff as to, the progress first. Are we, it seems that it was inactive for quite a bit of time this summer and that stuff, not really much action going on there. And I'm just wanting to know, are we on schedule and, are we, having issues, any type of issues that council should be aware of?
Thank you, and I'll ask Jeff
My first
Holman,
question.
our Director of Public Works and Community Services, to comment on that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. The short answer is yes to the first question and no to the second. There have been some delays that related to delivery of materials, hot weather, wet weather, COVID, et cetera. But the contractor has assured us that they're going to remain on schedule. They still believe that there is no pressure to change it, no issues with respect to extending the scope of the work. And so we're comfortable with that recommendation at this point.
Okay, thank you. My second, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go
concern
ahead.
or question may be, where the entrance was to the gate previously, would be going to, if you walk through the gates going in a southerly direction, to the left, going in the eastern direction, we had some memorials there, trees planted, little plaques that were there in memory of a couple individuals, and there's people that are part of those memorials or recognitions having to be able to access the park, but they have concerns that they may have been disturbed. And I want to assure them that the monuments are there and recognition of individuals would remain and that they haven't been disturbed. Do we know of, because I've gone to the area myself and I don't want to cross it because of construction, but there were some trees planted there one time. There's some plaques recognizing some individuals in the municipality. And I think they may have been disturbed.
Curtis or Jeff, who's going to speak on this?
I'll let Curtis speak to this.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So a complete inventory of all the plaques of the trees were taken prior to the construction beginning in the park. So we're confident that there won't be any issues coming up the back end.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's what I was wondering, because I know that before there had been some areas in the city that were recognizable to specific individual municipality. I just wanted to assure everybody that, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Hanley, and you have another item about the artifact donation, and I'll let you speak on that.
Yes, I think I may have, if the emails went through from my rural spot here, did you get some emails, some pictures I had sent the council in regards to some, it's a piece of the bridge actually, that has a plaque hanging from it.
I seen that.
That an individual approached me and wanted to donate it, so I talked to Tom, I've been speaking in Tom Russell in coordination with him and Deb Barnes, and looking at possibly, once I can set a date with the permission of council and the consent of council, of erecting it across the street from where the current park is. There's that little Lock 1 park there. I think you would be familiar with it, Mr. Mayor, there on South Street.
Yeah.
And that the city be able to erect it there. So I just wanted to mention that to council, and I believe you may have seen the photographs. And we know of no other pieces that have been saved from the bridge that we know of from residents of Port Robinson, so they wanted to donate it. I see Councillor Neal may have something to say there.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to inform council of that.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. I'll let Councillor Neal speak. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I agree that should be moved over into the park that you're talking about. And I think, I mean, it's sitting there, but I think there should be a plaque put there in regarding what happened and why that particular piece of iron is there is because of the bridge being demolished and what happened. So I think a plaque should be erected there so people understand and know what happened and why there's no bridge there today.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead,
Great point, Councillor Neal. What I could do is I'll talk to Tom Russell, because I know he'd be a great person to make out some type of literature and that stuff and recognition for the bridge, but great point. So, Mr. Mayor, just to, as I said, let council aware that I'll be coming back in the near future. So we could pick a day where we could dedicate that piece of monumental Bridge 12 to the park.
That's great, fantastic. Okay. That's it for statement by councilors. We're going to move to delegations to report. I got Craig Rowe, senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants, to speak to PDS 2021-37. Craig, are you there? Is he, there he is. Go ahead, Craig.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Nice to see you again. At the request of my client and based on some discussions with city staff, we're bringing tonight 205 St. David's Road back for the consideration of council. It's been a while since this project has been before you. There's been a lot that's gone on over the past year. So I just felt it would be beneficial, as did my client, to just give you a brief summary of kind of where we've been and what's gone on over the past year, and talk a little bit about some of the small changes that we made to the development plan that's before you tonight for consideration. So I'll just share my screen right now and I'll just take you through a brief presentation.
Go ahead, Craig.
Great, thank you. So our project at hand is a 15-unit vacant land condominium development with bungalow townhomes at 205 St. David's Road. So we first filed the application in April of 2020. It was deemed complete, or sorry, we filed in March. It was deemed complete in April of 2020 by city staff. Through that process, there was a necessary review that was conducted by the review agencies, staff, and the public had a chance to engage and provide their feedback through the open house in June, and then the public meeting on July 7th. And as council will probably recall, there was a lot of focus on the heritage component and questions about the history of the John Brown House. And we were referred then back through the Heritage Committee, LACAC, to have a study done of the building to confirm if there is any heritage value in it. And then that report brought forward to council. So a recommendation was brought forward by the LACAC committee, which was recommending that the property be considered for designation. That recommendation was declined by this council in November of 2020, and then subsequently our client pursued and followed through with demolition permits, and the structure's been taken down. And I can assure you that we're still true to our word from those first discussions. Pieces of the stonework and other elements of that property are in a safe storage location with our development team, and we do fully intend on repurposing them in terms of some sort of monumentation to the John Brown House as we go forward with development. So coming into the new year, our client worked a little bit more one-on-one with city staff to talk about the development plan, to see how we could make some subtle changes to it to satisfy some of the concerns of the adjacent neighbors, as well as to just satisfy some of the concerns that staff have with the general orientation and layout of the development. So those conversations were really, really beneficial. We got back into the fold after the owner had kind of let his preferences be known to the city, and we worked really diligently with Paul Klassen and Denise Landry on your team, and it was a really collaborative endeavor, working together and kind of troubleshooting everything and making sure that they were comfortable with what we arrived at, and also from our perspective, making sure that our client was also comfortable with the plan that would be proceeding. So tonight, that revised plan is brought back before you for consideration. The staff report is supportive, which is great to see from our perspective. I'm just going to walk you through briefly some of those changes that we made, just to give you a better understanding of where we started and where we ended up. So the main changes to design was specifically the T turnaround at the rear of is now at the rear of the property rather than being mid-block. And I'll move to the map in a moment. I'll walk you through all these visually. The next was we did some flaring of units 1 to 4 and 12 to 15. There are some comments and conditions related to that. We've been asked to realign those back to their original position along the road, to which we have no objection to. We've also added some architectural enhancements along St. David's Road at the request of the region's comments, and just general good design. We want to make sure that these buildings present well to St. David's Road, especially with the reconstruction and the new trail. It's very important that they have an eyes on the street and they have a good degree of architectural excellence to them. We did some small garage orientations, flipped the location of the garages and the units based on our client's preference, and also Unit 8, which is in the back corner, which is intended to be the unit that our client would ultimately move into. Just some customization in moving that along to make sure that we had the footprint and the setbacks and everything nailed down, because we were pursuing a site-specific zoning. So this is the original plan that you saw. So going through those items again, I was pulling in front of me, so I can kind of walk you through them. So the T turnaround originally we had proposed here with visitor parking mid-block. There was some concern about the roadway near the residence here and some headlight glare and things of that nature. So what we've done is we've now moved that T turnaround visitor parking to the back. From a design perspective, this worked really well for us because there is a significant grade change back there, and it allows us to avoid having the houses sitting at all different elevations. So it worked out well, and we find having this tucked in the back not only prevents there being visual clutter of parking that may be visible from the street, but it also provides an additional almost 8 meters of separation from the closest point with unit 8, whereas before we were down to 3 meters. So a more significant separation here to enhance that privacy. The next was the flaring of units that we were asked to entertain along here. As I noted, there are some conditions and commentary asking us to move them back to their original position where they were like this. We have no objection to that. We felt that was always a preferred location for this because it does provide that extra separation from the neighbor and that extra privacy. So the architectural elements that were added are these walkout porches. We've just shown the foundation outline here to make sure we get the zoning nailed down, but there'll be additional glazing. There'll be a man door here. So this is going to present almost like the front of a house towards the road visually, with also the functional element coming off the internal private road. This is the garage orientation. As you can see previously, some of these were on the south. Now they're on the north for some of these units. And then lastly, the Unit 8 redesign. It was just a typical unit. And our client has had this expanded a little bit and customized to kind of work around the T turnaround and take advantage of some of the geometry in the bottom corner here. So from a planning perspective, these are some small design changes, but in terms of the zoning amendment going forward, we've done away with several of the site-specific provisions. We brought this closer in conformity to the base R3 zoning that we're going after. And we continue to be of the opinion that this application satisfies all the necessary requirements of the Planning Act, is consistent and in conformity with provincial policy. It conforms with the region's official plan and the City of Thorold's official plan as well. We've had this great dialogue with city staff on this, and we've both arrived at what we feel from a planning perspective is a very supportable and very compatible development. And our client is very happy to see where it's landed and is very comfortable with moving forward with this. So that's my presentation for this evening, and certainly if you have any questions or clarifications, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Craig, and I'll open the floor for questions. Are there any questions for Craig? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Rowe. Thanks for the presentation. I have had a bit of feedback from a couple local residents, so I'll just run their questions by you. The parking has been moved to the back of the property. I think it's a good idea. It gives more separation. But the concern was for some of those neighbors, existing neighbors, they're concerned about snow being piled up there and potential flooding issues. Could you comment on that?
Certainly. So the snow storage is something that we'll be looking at from a more detailed perspective. We are subject to site plan, so the city will have the final sign off on how the snow storage is managed. It is typical that sometimes there is storage in a T turnaround. It's the most convenient location. One of the things that we will be dealing with is dealing with how our stormwater drainage is going to take place. So any of those melt areas, making sure that they drain efficiently, get into the storm sewer system, and then move out towards the road. In terms of those properties that are behind us, they actually sit higher from a grading perspective, so there wouldn't necessarily be any flooding risk to them. But our typical engineering design is a perimeter swale and drainage system. We need to ensure that any stormwater or snow melt doesn't bleed onto adjacent properties, and that our pre-condition is the same as our post-condition and or better.
Okay, great. So that's something from an engineering standpoint that would be looked at.
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess that's the last question I have for you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Are there any further questions? I got Councillor Hanley. Go ahead.
I've tried to find the reports. How many bedrooms are we looking at these for these condominiums? The house, 4, 5, 6?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, these are typically a 2-bedroom home. our builder that's going to be constructing these. This is one of the templates that has been built throughout Niagara. A great one is if you're down in Niagara Falls area, the Legends development near the golf course. Those are similar to these units, but they're not a multi-bedroom development. They're bungalow towns, so they typically have 2 bedrooms in them, maybe a den. The detailed architecturals will be worked out when they go through, but certainly this bungalow town is not conducive to multiple bedrooms like you may get with a 2-story townhouse or a larger multiple dwelling unit.
Okay, because I mentioned that because one of the concerns is too that this may just end up into another block housing development where they're going to be turning the garages into bedrooms and they're going to remodel in the basement. And next thing you know, there will be 6 bedrooms there. That's why I mentioned that.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could maybe just add, and I appreciate the question, Councillor Hanley, and appreciate the sensitivities about what's going on. I've been watching the conversation all evening. Our client has indicated multiple times before this council that this is not a student residence development. He's not pursuing that. This is more of a development he feels is appropriate in almost his legacy work. With this development being a condominium, it is governed by a condominium agreement. And through that agreement, which is developed in partnership with the city, condos really do make great neighbors because they have additional levels of controls that you don't necessarily get with a straight up rental. So there are limitations on modifying the units, adding additional bedrooms, if people can even rent out their ownership unit. All these things are taken into account, and the owner has the ability to provide those additional restrictions in the agreement as he is the owner until all units are sold off to their respective buyers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your response.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It just came back to my mind. I knew I was forgetting one question. Mr. Rowe, there's a bedrock issue in the area and blasting may need to occur. How are local existing residents protected from any damage should it occur?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as a point of clarity, blasting is not allowed in urban areas.
Okay.
There's none of that is permitted. What typically happens if you have a bedrock issue is they can use hole ramming as a way to break up the rock. One of the things that is typically completed though, as you go into detailed engineering and design, is that the geotechnical study done. So the bedrock may in fact not be entirely uniform. There could be some rock in some areas, but the geotechnical analysis gives us a rough idea of how deep the rock is and what we're essentially working with. There's opportunities to look at how the grading could work too, if there's any fill that's being added. So all of those considerations are going to be looked at, but in terms of the protection for area residents, a typical condition is that when development does get ready to move forward, there's an independent company that completes a pre-construction survey of adjacent properties. They go and they complete the evaluation at no cost to the homeowner. And then after those works are completed, or if something's happening during construction, they reach out to that agent who evaluates again, and then they engage the developer. So if there is damages, or at least a foundation cracking or any sort of damage like that, there's a pre-construction record and then a post-construction record, and then that can be mitigated and settlements can be made if there's any impacts.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
So Craig, if I understand right, then with all your modifications, you'll be asking for no minor variances from the city on any of these places?
Through Mr. Mayor, the reason that we've taken a while to come back is for that very reason. We've come forward, not only did we need to do a zone change, but the vacant land condominiums can be a little tricky when it comes to zoning. So we like to work with nearly complete foundation and building plans to make sure that any zoning departures we need are captured in the covering zoning bylaw amendment. We do not anticipate the need for any sort of minor variances as we've evaluated, and we do have our building footprints. If there's issues with survey boundaries and things like that, it could be possible that there may be a technical change. But again, the approval that council is granting this evening is for those draft plan condominium units. We're generally locked into that, and we're also subject to the site plan control. But we've done our very best, and we've reviewed the zoning with city staff multiple times to ensure that any deficiencies from that base zoning have been captured. And we also have the 2 bylaws. We have the one to the 214097, which is in effect, And then we have the backup one, as is practice with the city, on deck for 60/2019, when eventually the LPAT appeal is resolved and that zoning comes in. That new bylaw will come in and also have those site-specific provisions based on that bylaw. So we're kind of double backed up on it. But the purpose of the zoning was to avoid the committee of adjustment. We wanted to come in for zoning, draft approval, and then move on to site plan.
Well, hearing that, I would like to thank you because most of the developers are always coming for minor variances for something. And I'd like to thank you for, making these changes and listening to some of the people in the area that asked for the changes, and you and your client making those changes. It makes things a lot easier, and I'd like to see maybe more developers following suit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Mr. Mayor, do we need to move the report forward, PDS 2021-37?
Well, once the questions are done, I'll bring the report forward, and then I'll have staff bring it forward, okay?
Okay.
Any further questions for the presenter? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Craig, for your presentation. So I have a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Kenny, and I'll turn this over. Who's bringing this forward? Is it Paul? Are you bringing this forward? Go ahead, Paul Claassens, Senior Planner. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This report is the recommendation report for plan of condominium and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 205 St. David's Road for 15 vacant land condominium units that will facilitate the development of bungalow townhouses. Yeah, I believe I won't read the whole recommendations unless you prefer that I do, but that's just the context of the report.
You can read the 5 recommendations because I think they should be read. Okay.
That the Planning and Development Services Report PDS 2021-37 be received. That the draft plan of condominium at 205 St. David's Road be approved, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A of this report. That the zoning bylaw amendment application to rezone the subject lands under zoning bylaw 2140-97 from R1A to R3-19 in accordance with comprehensive zoning bylaw 2140-97 section of this report be approved. That the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the subject lands under zoning bylaw 60-2019 from R1A to R3D-64 in accordance with the comprehensive zoning bylaw 60-2019 section of this report be approved, and that further notice not be required for minor changes made to the proposed bylaw after the public meeting was held in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions for Paul? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Klassen. Mr. Klassen, can you confirm that this project conforms to provincial, regional, and city policies?
I can. Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. And like the presenter said and Councillor Kenny asked, setbacks, minor variances are not an issue?
So the zoning bylaw does include some variances from the base zones. Those are all they're outlined in the report. I don't know if, like Craig explained, we worked pretty hard to capture everything so that we don't end up needing to come back, but there are some areas where some minor relief is required. Did you want me to go over any of those, or?
No, I don't need specifics, but
okay.
The variances that may be looked at would be no greater than the Committee of Adjustment would normally look at?
There won't be any variances through you, Mr. Mayor. We're approving everything right now. So yeah, I guess I understand your question a little better now. Yeah, other than the zone change, which is the primary reason why we're here to permit the townhouse units, there's nothing that would not constitute a minor variance.
Okay, thanks for your answers.
Is there any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, Is this the next one? Is there a presentation? A delegation? Okay. Daniel? Okay. Is Daniel here? That's Daniel Venturuzzo, partner in Versus Design. Is Daniel there? Here he is. Hello, Daniel.
Good evening.
And you're speaking to PDS 2021-38, request for council resolution to allow for minor variance application, Rolling Meadows Phase 15. Go ahead.
Yes, I am. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Daniel Venturuzzo. I'm the designer of Rolling Meadows Phase 15. The purpose of our application is to obtain a resolution from council to allow for a minor variance application to be submitted. Provide some background. The subject property is Phase 15 within the Rolling Meadows community. A zoning bylaw amendment was submitted to city staff and approved on March 23rd, 2021 to permit townhouse dwellings and modifications to the zoning requirements. A Planning Act amendment was approved in 2015 that places a moratorium on minor variance applications being submitted from the date of passing of the site-specific bylaw amendment. This would mean that we'd have to wait till March 23rd, 2023 to apply for a minor variance without this resolution. Rolling Meadows Phase 15 consists of 15 townhouse blocks with 62 townhouse units fronting onto public roads with numerous servicing easements. We are requesting a resolution from council to allow for a minor variance application to be submitted to the Committee for Rolling Meadows Phase 15 for Lot 1 and Lot 42. The variances are to permit the covered porches with a reduced setback to the upper lanes. The two dwelling designs have upgraded architectural features for these corner lots as they are abutting upper lanes. As you can see, we've added a side porch and other elements to the sides of both elevations A and B. These houses have already been built in several other phases within the Rolling Meadows development, which have received positive feedback for their aesthetic appeal. This time, we'd like to thank council for your consideration to allow the committee to allow us to present this. We feel that the location of these two lots is important and have upgraded elevations. We respectfully request the resolution be approved, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Daniel, for your presentation, and I will now open the floor up for questions to Daniel. Are there any questions to Daniel? Seeing none, Daniel, thank you for your presentation. I'll now move into the to the PDS 2021-38 and mover Councillor Hanley, seconder Councillor Neal, and Denise Landry, Manager of Planning. Are you bringing this forward?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor to the councillors, the recommendations of the report are that staff report PDS 2021-38 be received, and that council permits the owners to apply for minor variance applications for blocks 1 and 11 on plan 59M494 as per section 45 1.4 of the Planning Act. And this concludes the report. Thank you.
So now I'll open the floor up for any questions for our Manager of Planning, Denise Landry. Councillor Longo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Manager of Planning. Could you explain why this minor variance application would come to City Council and not go to the Committee of Adjustment? I just want to understand why we look at it.
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor Longo, the Planning Act does not allow a minor variance application to be submitted to the Committee of Adjustment within 2 years of a zoning bylaw amendment being approved. So a zoning bylaw amendment was approved this past March for this specific area. So the Planning Act says you can't apply for 2 years unless council by resolution allows the applicant to apply. So tonight, the decision is not around whether or not the minor variance should be approved or not. The question is whether council will allow the applicant to apply for the minor variance. So if you do allow tonight the applicant to apply, then the application would still go to the Committee of Adjustment, and it would still be up to the Committee of Adjustment to make the decision on the application.
Okay, so that's a good explanation. So we're not approving it, we're just giving them the ability to apply.
Yes,
And
through the mayor, that is
would
correct.
Would we now be opening the door for everybody else who would want to apply to come to council and ask for that ability?
Through the council, through the mayor to the councilor, anytime there's an opportunity, so within the 2 years, if someone had come forward with a zoning amendment and say they sell off the lots to somebody and the builder has different designs, different plans, they would then have the opportunity to come to council and say, you know, we would like to apply for a minor variance. Council, can you please permit us to apply? But everyone, of course, is looked on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thanks for your knowledge.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, next up, we have consent reports. Items 15A, B, and C. And are we taking them as a group or no? I got Councillor Sentence. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull 15B, 3, and 4, the Marine Waterways Report. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, and the nursing shortage report to support for the city of St. Catharines.
So 15C and B and what? I'm sorry, 15B.
15B number 3 and 4, I believe they are.
Okay. So we're pulling 15B, 3, and 4. Is there anyone else? How about 15A and 15C? Is everybody good with 15A and 15C? Okay, so I have a mover, Councillor Kenny, and a seconder, Councillor Longo, that we approve 15A and 15C, and then we'll go back to 15B. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So now we're into 15B, and you wanted to pull item 3 and 4, and I'll open the floor to you to do that. So go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, well, the Marine Waterways report that I'd like to support the city of St. Catharines on, I think would be beneficial to our multimodal hub and our seaway area as well. And the nursing shortage report that they had or that they want support for, I think that speaks to itself with this pandemic and the shortage that we're having. I'd like to support them in their endeavor to find ways to get more nurses and keep qualified nurses.
So we're pulling item 3 and 4, the letters, and we're going to support them, not file them. Is there anyone want to speak to those?
Please.
Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now we're going to do the rest of the whole report, 15B. I had again mover Councillor Kenny and a seconder Councillor Longo that we approve the whole 15B. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Thank you. We're now moving into discussion reports. Up first, I have DF 2021-36 Award for Services to Create Asset Management Plan for Non-Core Asset. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder, Councillor Hanley, and I have our Manager of Finance, Kate Hanna. Are you going to speak to this, Kate? Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening. The recommendations are that the City of Thorold enter into an agreement with Public Sector Digest to create the asset management plan for non-core assets in the amount of $114,500. That staff utilize the purchase by negotiation method as permitted by Policy 300-01, Procurement/Purchasing Policy, Appendix C2 and Appendix C10, and that Mayor and the Clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreement.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any questions on this to Kate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now we're gonna move on to 16B, DF 2021-37, award for services to upgrade Brock Business Park area specific and to update development charges study. I have a mover, Councillor DeRose, and a seconder, Councillor Neal. And again, I'll turn this over to a manager of finance, Kate Hanna. Go ahead, Kate.
Through you, Mayor, that the City of Thorold enter into an agreement with Watson and Associates to update the Brock Business Park Area Development Charges Study at an amount not to exceed $25,000. That an update to the Development Charges Study for changes to the Development Charges Act through Bill 108 at a cost of $12,500 to be funded from development charges of $11,300 and from the Municipal Development Reserve of $1,200. And that the City of Thorold enter into an agreement with Watson and Associates to update to the Development Charges Study at an amount not to exceed $12,500. That staff utilize the purchase by negotiation method as permitted by Policy 300-01, Procurement and Purchasing Policy, Appendix C6 and Appendix C10, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any questions on this report to Kate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, Kate, thanks so much. You got off easy tonight.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, 16C, PDS 2021-36, recommendation report, zoning bylaw amendment to remove holding H symbol from 1468 Barron Road. I have a mover, Councillor Decker, and a seconder, Councillor Sentence. And Bryn, Senior Planner, Bryn O'Neill, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is related to 1468 Barron Road. Planning and Development Service, planning staff recommend that the report be received and that the zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding symbol from 1468 Barron Road be approved. Thank you.
Questions to Bryn regarding this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. FES 2021-06, relocation of Station 4, concrete sidewalk balance. And I have a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Kenny, and I have our Fire Chief, Terry Dixon. You're up, Terry.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, to Council. Staff recommends that Council approve the reallocation of $3,924.93. Remaining balance from the capital expenditures from Station 4 concrete sidewalk work to replace an outdoor storage shed at Station 4.
Okay, are there any questions for our Chief Dixon regarding this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Notice of motion, I have Councillor Wilson, you're up on review of land disposition policy.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure I was unmuted. So I'm just going to be bringing in a motion next council that we ask staff to revisit the disposition of land policy to put more of a process together that we can follow, so we're not floundering every time we are in this situation. So there's a clear process that's transparent for us to follow.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We'll look forward to that report. Anything else before I go to bylaws? Okay, bylaws. First reading of bylaws, I have a mover, Councillor DeRose, seconder, Councillor Longo, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws and that the same now be read a first time. Bylaw 93, 2021, Bylaw 95, 2021, Bylaw 96, 2021, and Bylaw 97, 2021. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Final reading of bylaws. Moved by Councillor DeRose, seconded by Councillor Longo, that the bylaws just read a first time be read a second and third time and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And now I have a mover from Councillor Decker and a seconder, Councillor Hanley, that council move into closed session at this time to discuss potential sale of disposition of land, turf field development, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, Thorold Nonprofit Housing Corporation, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, COVID-19 vaccination policy. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So now I'm going to ask you to log out and log in. Am I correct, Matt, under the closed session login? Okay, thank you.